Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, the Garbers send their regrets. Unfortunately, California decided to turn the lights off, so they didn't have power for this episode, and Stabby was very disappointed. Christmases and Halloween are kind of her thing, mostly because I think she gets to cook things. I think that's why Jana likes it too. It's the cooking.
Oh no, duh! it's all about the food, man.
and the bacon maven.
So, but with that being said, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. We've got Mr. Dave Hensley.
Hi, I'm Dave Hensley. I write military sci-fi, post-apocalyptic sci-fi, and a little bit of urban fantasy, mostly for Three Ravens and a little bit for Canon Publishing.
Nice. And then we have Mr. Isaac Kraft.
Hello, I'm Isaac Kraft. I write science fiction and fantasy with horror elements, in between working on digital illustration and cover art.
Okay, so the rumor has it you're actually gonna talk a lot today. We're gonna get you to get over your shyness, and you're gonna rock it.
I'm certainly gonna try. I've been getting coffee here and there, and chocolate and sweets, so I'm kind of hyper right now.
Woohoo!
That's excellent. All right. Next we have Mr. Woo, I messed that one up because next in the alphabet is Jana S Brown, the many personalities thereof.
Yeah, I have many personalities, but most of them are not gender bent. So I'm Jana S Brown. I write under the pen name Jena Rey for all things science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, things that go bump in the night. I write the weird and the wonderful with Smoochies, and I am glad to be here with all you lovely gentlemen.
I was going to say when you decided to get all flamboyant, you could join the Navy, but Dave's here and he might get mad.
I'm not touching that one with the 10-foot pole.
Jan is welcome in the Navy.
Fantastic.
Last but certainly not least, we have Mr. MD Boncher.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. You keep it up, you're going to get some back. You know that. MD Boncher. I write in science fiction and in fantasy, dark epic fantasy, and high-flying pulp punk adventure for science fiction. I write my own music, and I do a whole bunch of artwork too. So multifaceted and confusing.
Oh, freaking standing. And next, because this is the Blasters and Blades podcast, and even during the holiday season, we can't get away from it. We're going to do the religion question. But first, how we all met. So true story, we were actually waiting in line to sit on Santa's lap. But then it was at the Yucatami Plaza, and things got a little hectic. But don't worry, he came down and saved us. We're not sure if it was Santa Claus or Bruce Willis or what, but we're alive, so it ended well.
Bruce Claus, Santa Willis.
Yeah. Isaac's probably too young for that reference, though.
Just remember that Die Hard is not only a Christmas movie, it is a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Go on.
A workaholic husband separated from his wife goes to the big city to try and win her heart back with the naughty little gremlins of thieving terroristic style criminals than a suave exterior of the Grinch of Alan Rickman.
I heard a rumor.
It is a Hallmark Christmas movie.
I heard a rumor, and I don't know if it's true, but this year Hallmark might actually try to use a second plot instead of the one they recycle every year.
No, crazy talk.
Oh, well, one day. All right. And so now we've got to do the religion question. Are you guys ready for this?
Do it.
All right. A Christmas Story. It's a Wonderful Life, or Miracle on 34th Street. So we're going to go with you, MD.
Which one I like most? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, most definitely.
Oh, out of that trio, I'll have to go to the one that I return to often, and that's It's a Wonderful Life, but it's by a hair over Christmas Story.
Okay. Because you'll shoot your eye out if you're not careful. All right, Isaac.
That's right.
Isaac.
I'm going with It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay. Any reason?
it's got good and evil in it. It's got angels. There's supernatural bents to it. All the whole number of people in the town who George Bailey helped, they pray, and the answer is this humble little character who winds up being more than he seems.
Okay, that's a good answer. All right, Dave.
Man, it's kind of a toss-up. I'm going to go with Christmas movie though, or Christmas Story. Sorry, Christmas movie. They're all Christmas movies. The Christmas Story, man, because I just get a kick out of Old Boy's dad being a furious furnace fighter. And I like the leg lamp. Like it's
French. It's fragile.
That cracks me up every time I see it.
Okay, and Jana.
None of the above. For that kind of classic Christmas, I like White Christmas. In particular, I like the Sisters reprise with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye. It cracks me up every single time, and is kind of a indication that the season is here when we watch Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby go just absolutely nuts and take that reprise. So that's my favorite for a real classic kind of Christmas.
Okay. I like all three of them. That's why they made the list. But if I'm going to pick just one, I'm going to go with the Christmas Story. That iconic scene, I triple dog dare you, and he licks the pole and he gets stuck there. It's hilarious. You've got the kid gets in trouble, so he starts cussing. And the mom's like, where did you learn this? And he's picturing his dad in the truck and at the furnace and all the places where his dad is working. And this is from the generation like me who held the flashlight for our dads. That's why we can't be traumatized anymore. But rather than call his dad out, because, the bro code, he names his bully, and then you just hear him getting whipped in the background. Classic. And then, what kid when they get soap in their mouth? They probably don't do the soap in the mouth anymore, but you're going to make me go blind, mother. That was
soap poisoning.
Right, it was just too perfect. I just can't get past that one. So I don't know. For me, it's definitely a Christmas Story. All right, and because we're polytheistic and we wanted to pick some family-friendly movies, we've got the Santa Claus, Polar Express, or Elf. Dave.
Oh man, I got to go with the Santa Claus. My daughter insists that we watch Elf every year, and every year I want to dive into the screen and murder Buddy. The Santa Claus, though, man, I love Tim Allen, and it's great.
Okay, all right, MD.
So, David, you're saying you're an angry elf?
Yeah, yes, a large, furry, angry elf.
That'd be a dwarf. I have to go with Elf because I've not seen the other two, and it's strange people knowing I'm such a foamer, being rabid rail fan, that I've never watched or read the Polar Express because I don't like fantasy trains. If I get trains, I want real trains, and I don't care that is a 484 Northern. That is a beautiful engine, but it goes on ice. That doesn't work for me.
So you're a purist.
Elf it is. Yes, I am a purist in my rail fandom.
Okay, Jana.
I think I'm still with the Santa Claus. I do like Tim Allen doing his thing, and I didn't care for the rest of them, so they did a bunch that were attached to it, but that first one works for me.
Okay. Isaac.
I'm going with Elf. I don't care for the main character, but it still has Lord of the Rings vibes. With the Rangers in the park, I put them on the naughty list and they never forgave me. Compared to the Polar Express, trains bore me, and the Santa Claus, it was very clever with the claws, but it was short, and I was kind of hoping for more to it than what it was. So it's going to be Elf.
Okay, I know. For me, it's the Santa Claus mostly because that came out when I was, of an age to actually care to watch that kind of stuff. So I have seen it when it was age appropriate, and they just, nostalgia. Although they're all good.
Shut up, you.
Buddy,
I had kids. I was watching it with my children.
Absolutely.
That's your story. You're sticking to it.
Yeah, Buddy is a little annoying, though. I will guarantee you that. But it does give you the best meme ever. You sit upon a throne of lies. I mean, that is like just so awesome as far as it goes. So, anyway, all right. And now, because it is, like I said, we're going to be airing this in just a couple days, right before Christmas. What is your favorite Christmas tradition that you have, Dave?
Honestly, my favorite is the putting up the Christmas tree, because we try to do it every year, like the day after Thanksgiving, and we've done that since I was a kid. Like that's when the tree went up in my house when I was a little boy. Was the day after Thanksgiving, and it was the day that everybody was home, and we, the ornaments came out, and they're ornaments from when my dad was a kid, ornaments that I made with my grandparents, and so we just kind of kept that tradition when Nicole and I got married and we started having kids. Day after Thanksgiving, the tree goes up. This year, the week before Thanksgiving, we put up 3 trees instead of 1 tree. I don't know what happened. I think my house got co-opted by elves when I wasn't looking.
I was going to say it's just overachieving or something.
Maybe. I got a 3-year-old grandson running amok, so you can't have too much Christmas spirit for a 3-year-old.
And you got Elf on the Shelf to keep him behaving.
No, I have Pa's righteous right hand of justice.
That works too. So I have been thinking about that whole naughty or nice, watching you and all that you get with Santa, with the red-nosed reindeer. That means he knew they were bullying Rudolph, and he did nothing.
He was tough
on it for all lines.
All right, Isaac, your favorite Christmas tradition?
All the Christmas movies that come out, and with my family, we like to cook a lot. So we do pies, we do cookies, we'll fix a turkey.
Okay. Jana, I'm sure you've got a really long list and it involves food, so you're going to make me hungry, but go for it.
I do have a really long list, and most of it involves foods. There are other things that we like. My daughter and I like putting up our advent calendars. We have several, and then she counts them down. And on Thanksgiving, we give everybody who's in our house eating, and sometimes that list is small and sometimes that list is very, very large. Everybody takes home an advent calendar from us. And so they're all doing their advent calendars at the same time. So like my grandson this year got one that's all teeny tiny little Matchbox cars. And he is in love with them, except that they missed the first day. So on day 2, he got 2 of them. So on day 3, when he came downstairs, he went, "I get 3?" And they're like, no, that's not actually how it works. That was just kind of that was just a nice extra giving. So we like doing those. But then there's the food thing. I start baking at about mid-September, and I stop at about the first week of January. The holidays are very, very important when it comes to our food. And so since the beginning of December, I've made 8 dozen sugar cookies, 12 pounds of fudge, and that's about a quarter of what I'll do there. 2 pounds of toffee today, truffles today. Divinity will happen, chocolate centers will happen, and we'll make gingerbread and we'll make fruitcake as we get towards the end of the month. So we cook and cook and cook and share it with everybody. So, I'm going through the list, and it's like, and my husband goes, "Yes, well, there's 35 people at work, so they'll each get a box, and lots of other people get boxes. And it's the time that we engage with the food, and all of our neighbors are really, really grateful that we are engaging with the food. And anybody who's on a diet, they just don't tell me because I don't want to know. And whatever happens from there, what happens between you and the candy stays between you and the candy." Oh, goodness.
Just trying to keep the holiday spirit alive. We do what we can.
You just don't want to hear about the fudge anymore. I'm gonna take the fudge out of JR's package.
No, I'm here for the fudge.
You can add it to mine. That'll be great.
So Boncher.
Jana apparently is a walking radius effect of diabetes. God bless her.
Just a little at a time. You only need a little.
It's only a little diabetes. Unfortunately, I'm going to be a little bit of a Debbie Downer. All my Christmas traditions have kind of passed because they were attached to places or people that I'm no longer near. Since moving down to West Virginia, I've been working to try and establish new ones, but nothing's really kind of taken hold yet. I think last year was the first time that both me and my wife said we want a candlelight service and didn't know of any church that was doing it. So we literally drove to Charleston, West Virginia, which is 2 hours away, to find a Lutheran church that was having a candlelight service with a choir and things like that. And it was really kind of nice because one of the big traditions of my family that was the start of the Christmas season is my father founded the Appleton Boy Choir in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I became a part of it when I was a boy. And so the Christmas season started trickling in sometime around early September with the school year, where weekly practices of all the Christmas carols and songs that we'd be singing for the a festival of 9 lessons and carols. So for me, going to Lawrence University Chapel and hearing the opening a cappella soloist saying "Once in Royal David City" is absolutely one of the best little starts for it all, and then to end it singing oh my god, I blanked. Not Come All You Fit, Gloria in Excelsis, and it just absolutely was wonderful to go out into the night and all dressed up and all the Christmas lights out and all the people. It was just, that's it. This is Christmas season now. So unfortunately, those times are lost by distance and time for me, but I hold them here.
Okay. So I guess for me, a lot of it's the family time, but in the holiday season, the family time is around a dinner table. So, but more than anything, it's just, you start getting older and some of your family starts dying and you realize you didn't value it enough while they were there. And so for me, I look back and I think of all the times, like I sat and listened to my great uncles tell me stories about Korea or, the Great Depression, or insert whatever cool historic tidbit that they experienced. So yeah, the family time. I know it's kind of cheesy, but we're going to go with it. All right. And finally, favorite Christmas food. So we can make MD's diabetes twitch. Dave.
Oh boy. My favorite Christmas food is going to be quasi-heretical. You know what Waldorf salad is?
No.
You just made my wife's day right there.
I do. It's lovely.
It's 9 kinds of fruit and whipped cream and just delicious goodness in a bowl that, a cauldron would be a better container for it. Hands down, my favorite thing at Christmas, followed directly by my grandmother's divinity and fudge. Which
what is divinity?
Divinity is Jana can tell you better than I can. It's pink confection heaven is what it is.
Yeah, divinity is you take whipped egg whites and you add to that a cooked simple syrup. So you end up cooking the egg whites, and it's like marshmallows on crack. It's that next stage beyond marshmallow to where it is smooth and it melts in your mouth. The egg whites get cooked by the sugar. They combine together and it whips up and it's all puffy. And divinity is amazeballs. It's also really hard to cook because if you're over or under just a little bit, it goes hard, under, and you have marshmallows. But it is one of my favorite things to cook. So yes, divinity is amazing. With or without nuts, though. What do you think, Dave? It's an argument at our house.
No, divinity is hands down there's nothing like it.
No, she's saying, do you prefer it with or without nuts?
With or without nuts?
Oh, with for sure.
Okay, then we can continue to be friends.
Well, I know you're religious.
Everything's better with nuts.
I just thought you were like talking about praying or something because it's Christmas. I didn't know it was actually a food.
Yes, it is totally a food. It's a candy.
Can't go wrong there. All right, MD.
Food for Christmas. My family's tradition was that on Christmas Eve, we generally just sort of picked kind of whatever treat we wanted to have, and it was more of a smorgasbord of little things like that. So I don't necessarily have any favorites that way, but when my grandmother was alive, she would make these wonderful little chocolate fudge and walnut balls. Otherwise, nowadays, if I want to recapture the same sort of sentimentality, it is Tremblay's fudge. From Tremblay's is in Eagle River, Wisconsin, and Stillwater, Minnesota. And they make the absolute smoothest, most rich fudge I have ever had. There's been nothing even close. And I've had good fudge, but nothing's topped that. And yes, you can order it online. But that's always been the all-time topper. So if you can hit Tremblay fudge level with your homemade fudge, you have been blessed by God. Because I'm sure that is on the dessert plate in heaven.
All right, Jana.
All right, so the candies and the cookies, all the things that I mentioned that we make, those are all really important to me. A lot of that is because of the tradition behind it. I had a grandmother who worked with C's Fudge back before it was C's, and she learned all of those things, and then she taught her children who taught her children, and I have memories of going together with my great-grandmother and the whole entire family, and we would go to a cafeteria, and it was the old style one that had the tables that were up to the walls, and so we'd pull all those down, the tables and the benches, and every family would bring different chocolate centers, and we would dip chocolates. And you're talking about thousands of pounds of chocolate, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 pounds of chocolate in a day. And then everybody could take home stuff from other people's centers. So that way you only had to make one center, but you went home with all these different varieties. And all of my life, every time I dip chocolates, I picture in my mind my grandmother, who was 5 foot nothing. I am solidly 5'11". She was 5 foot nothing. And my entire life she had poofy, silvery white hair. And she would walk around with a wooden spoon. And her job was to make sure that you didn't lick your fingers. Because if you lick your fingers and you get moisture into the chocolate, you'll break the chocolate. And it'll break the temper. And so you would see her, and she was lightning fast with this thing. And it didn't matter if you were teeny tiny kid or big buff farmer son and grandson, which we're all farmer stock. She was just whap, and you'd see them just go, it's like, but I'm finished with mine. I'm allowed. And she's like, to the bathroom. You can lick your fingers once you're out in the hall, but as long as you're here with the chocolates, that's not a thing. So the candy's really important to me because that's all history. That's all family history. And then I teach my kids to do it. I throw candy canes with my boys because it's fun to watch them go, ow, 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 it's hot. Why? How can you touch it? And it's like, yeah, these hands have been places, guys. So that's my favorite there. And then my husband makes the world's most amazing standing rib roast. It is delectable and amazing and gushy, and all of the good things come from a ginormous piece of meat, cooked well and sliced fine.
Can't beat meat. Ham is one of the best. Yeah, I know what I did, Dave. I just wanted to see if you could choke your coffee out your nose tonight.
That's just mean. That's just mean.
Ham is one of the best things, and ham and deviled eggs is one of the best things that come out of holidays. But that's also a Thanksgiving answer. So, in fact, there's plenty of hilarious memes about you're only going to eat one, and the guy's got his cheeks puffed out with dozens of them. So. And if I'm picking, I know I haven't forgotten you, Isaac. And if I'm picking, since I'm already talking desserts, it's either pecan pie or fudge. My grandma used to make the best fudge, and unfortunately, the relatives that came after her can't make it as good as she used to. But so my grandmother was 4'10", 4'11", and she was the mean one too. And at one point in time, she was a psych nurse in a mental hospital. So it's always the little ones you got to watch out for. I'm telling you, she was so scary. She had 10 kids, and when she would scream in the yard because one of her kids was messing up, everybody ran home just to be safe. The whole neighborhood kids would run to their house when she went out in the yard. I've heard stories from her neighbors too. So, all right, lesson of the week, people. Watch out for the short midget peoples. Just saying.
Short grandmas are
short
short and gray.
grandmothers.
Absolutely. And wooden spoons.
I should mention one good holiday memory also, food-wise, is I have now learned to make my grandmother's stuffing, and I make it almost as good as her. That's what startled me. I figured it out. My parents sent me the recipe, and for the last 2 years, I've been working at it. And we also discovered that it's incredibly low carb of all things. It's more of a sausage stuffing, and when you stuff a turkey with it, and then you decide to make bone broth out of the carcass afterward, you can taste the stuffing as it permeated the bird. It is just unbelievably rich and tasty. So
awesome.
That's
all right, Isaac. We didn't forget you. Favorite holiday food?
I've got several things. They're all family recipes, especially there's a pumpkin custard pie that's family recipe. There's sugar cookies. Also, there's a fruit cake. This one particular fruit cake towers above everything else. That's fruit cake recipe. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't have the tiny fruit in it. It's like large pieces. Also, I used to do candy making. I'm still kind of experimenting with candy making, but I've learned how to make caramel, at least, with recipes.
Nice. Speaking of learning to make, we used to get it when I was in college. We had host families that would like take you in for the holidays sometimes, and they used to do what's called panettone, Italian sweetbread for Christmas. And I found that it was how do you say it?
Panettone.
Yeah, I've when I was looking for breads to start looking at what I was going to make for Christmas, I actually found a recipe for it. So I'm going to decide if I'm brave enough to try some breads, because breads are one of those things you can either do it or you can't.
Oh, you can do it.
My wife
Bread
can.
is awesome.
Yeah, so Italian Christmas bread is also on my list. Although fruitcake is one generally people make and then get rid of and gift it because nobody likes it. So I'm surprised you like that, Isaac. You might be the only one in America that likes fruitcake.
Nope, my wife.
That's not true.
My wife loves to make it too.
It was
Dave?
that one.
Was that you?
Yeah, fruitcake's awesome.
Okay.
Depends completely on what kind of fruitcake you make. There's so many different versions. And I prefer the German version. I'm blanking on what the special name is, but my wife makes it and she loves it. So she's right on board with you there, Isaac. So
the Germans can make some good stuff sometimes. We used to, Grandma was German ethnically, partly. And so the Apfelkuchel, the apple pancake deal that almost had candied apples with it, that was so freaking good. I can't pronounce it to save my life. Although
Stollen and Germany does Christmas well.
Yeah, and I tried Spanish in college or in high school and then in college, but I couldn't roll my R's to save my life. And so they told me, just take German. You just got to sound like you're angry and you want to spit on someone and you can speak the language. So, but I've forgotten a lot of it since then, unfortunately. And all 12 of our German listeners are going to be sending us hate mail now, or me, hate mail specifically. All right, and our last question before we talk about the topic that brought us here. We are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So, coffee or tea, and how would Santa take it? Dave, how's Santa taking it?
It's coffee, and the Santa takes it the way God intended, with heavy cream and a touch of honey.
Okay, I've recently started the honey in my coffee. It is delicious. I'm not quite the salt and butter crowd that some people do for keto coffee, but
bulletproof coffee.
Yeah, I think that's what they call
terrible.
it.
Yep.
So
yak milk.
It's not terrible.
No, there are people that put yak milk in stuff. You kid, but those people exist. All right, Boncher.
Yes, Handley. Me personally, it's coffee for Santa, and we'll go all out. Give him the heavy cream, We're gonna watch his sugar though. We'll give him xylitol, which tastes like honey without the impact. But we'll cheat a little bit, and we'll start when we're going to give him whipped cream and a peppermint stick to swirl around in there.
Okay.
I'd say it'd have to be a mocha. 4 shots of espresso, so he's like hardcore wired up for those long trips.
That makes sense. So, Jana.
No, I argued that Santa is a hot chocolate man. You get the hot chocolate, you get the peppermint, you get the whipping cream, you put it with the cookies. I mean, the tall glass of milk is a standard that goes with it as well. But if you're talking hot drinks, I think Santa is a hot chocolate man. And Coffee Brand Coffee makes hot chocolate. So even when we're talking about our sponsors, I'm allowed to say that because they have a killer peppermint and a killer caramel for their hot chocolates. So there you be.
Okay, Isaac.
With whole milk and 2 freshly baked cookies.
So you think, but is he drinking coffee with whole milk or tea?
Coffee. Definitely coffee.
Okay, I'm going to surprise everyone here, and I'm going to say that I'm seeing Santa as doing the peppermint hot chocolate because the peppermint is Christmassy.
See?
Yeah.
I'm seeing the peppermint stick. Yeah, with the peppermint stick. Like, I think you're onto something, and the cookies, of course, because Dad can't eat all of them.
No matter how hard he tries.
No matter how hard he tries. All right. We're going to pause for a moment.
Attention.
All good. We're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shuffle the man. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about A Christmas Carol. So, boom!
Ho, ho! Oh, hell. Is that sleigh bells ringing in your ears or a few rounds from an M60? You wanted the jolly fat man to bring Yuletide joy, but the season has gifted you with a heartbreaker and a life taker. Badass Santa. Grab your eggnog and camouflage candy canes. Strap on your bulletproof holiday stockings and prepare for thrills and kills. From bloodstained rebellion at the North Pole to a Black Ops raid on a distant planet, these 18 action-packed tales will show you Saint Nick as you have never seen him before. It's all you'll want for Christmas.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. If you got something you want to read and get you in the Christmas spirit, this will do it to you. And with that, we're going to talk about the topic that brought us here, which is A Christmas Carol. So, first off, does everyone remember like when they first saw it, or did they read it? Like, where did you first experience The Christmas Carol?
I read it first. I did not see it or see the play or anything else, but I read it first, and I was, elementary school, first or second grade. There was a teacher there who was doing the challenge where it was, we read all these other things. Here's a whole bunch of cool Christmas stories that you could read, and I took on the hardest one, not knowing that it was the hardest one at that point because it just sounded cool. And the language of it was a little much for the age that I was at, but the story wasn't. And that story was still really powerful from that time. And I have read many different versions and seen lots of different plays and different films and everything else. And I have favorites, but I love it in all of its incarnations.
Okay. Isaac?
I first got it when I watched Scrooge as a little guy.
Okay.
Back in the 80s.
Bill Murray.
Yeah. I read it as the novel back in high school, and I remember it was a very fast read. It was small compared to Charles Dickens's other works.
Okay. What about you, MD?
The earliest version I remember seeing was when I was a kid, and I actually saw a musical version with Albert Finney. And somehow the song "Thank You Very Much" got stuck in my head, not realizing as a child what exactly the "Thank You Very Much" was for. And that version always stuck with me through life. But I've seen probably about 6 different versions of it since, now that I think about it, including I own a copy of the 1930s version that's out there with, is it with Basil Rathbone? It's, no, it can't be. Lon Chaney Sr., I think. One of them they have, like one of those. Yeah, the George C. Scott version, one of the more recent ones, is actually fantastic. I agree. So, but yeah, otherwise, it wasn't until 2 years ago that I saw the Muppet Christmas Carol, and it's decent. It's decent, but it's not my favorite. Even the Jim Carrey one, I can say it's decent, but it's definitely not my favorite. So I've seen a lot.
Yeah, I think I saw my first exposure to the Christmas Carol was the George C. Scott version. Probably had to be like 88 or 89 when I saw it, because it was on network television. So it was long after it had come and gone from the movie theaters and wandered into syndication or whatever the heck it is that lets them put it on network TV around Christmas time. And I probably just kind of hung around with that. Like, I got introduced to the Muppet Christmas Carol sometime in the late 90s, and it's fun and I enjoy it.
Disney Christmas Carol. Yep.
I get a kick out of the Muppet one, but I don't. I actually read Dickens's Christmas Carol until, and I bet it was like 5 or 6 years ago. Somehow I had managed to not read it all these years, mainly because I was pretty satisfied with the George C. Scott Christmas Carol. Like, I really like George C. Scott as Ebenezer Scrooge. Sort of gets the story across. And so I got around to reading it, and now I've read it every year, every Christmas since I picked up a copy of it to read. And then fell in love with a later sort of sideways iteration, which is called The Man Who Invented Christmas, which isn't really the Christmas Carol. It's more a story about Charles Dickens writing the Christmas Carol, but it's still a great movie.
Just watched it tonight. I love that one.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think sometime in the late 80s, George C. Scott's Christmas Carol is where I was first exposed to it.
So for me, I actually read A Christmas Carol in honors English in high school, I think my 10th grade year, but I probably watched the Muppet Christmas Carol before then. Because I remember being shocked when we read the Christmas Carol that was what the Muppet was based off of. So yeah, that would be it for me. So what do you think makes it such a compelling story that there have been so many reimaginings of it over the years?
Hope, without a doubt. The Christmas Carol 100% without diving too deep into you can't talk about the Christmas Carol without talking about Christmas, which means talking about the religious angle a little bit. It's hope. It's this idea that Ebenezer Scrooge, who is about as bad as a man can be, still has a shot at redemption, still has a chance to be better, and to be so much better that, when Dickens closes the story, he talks about how no one ever kept Christmas as well as Ebenezer Scrooge. And so I think that it's that theme of hope that threads through the whole, through the entire story, that makes it pretty much timeless. You can identify with Ebenezer Scrooge today just as easily as somebody could identify with Scrooge in 1910.
Well, don't forget, this is a classic example of story before sermon in a way, because A Christmas Carol is an exemplification set to the world of its day of the good news of the gospel, that no man, no matter how wicked they are, can be redeemed and can be brought back to goodness and light, and that all can be saved, no matter how wicked they've once been. They have to just take and accept the gift of salvation and do everything they can to keep with it. And this is why this story rings so true throughout the ages, because it is an eternal story. We talked a few weeks back about aspirationalism, and this is a story that exemplifies aspiring to be better and coming out of the cramped and horrible circumstances that you are in to be more, and to have that divine touch to turn your heart into being a force for good in the world. And I think that's part of why it resonates so well. And as you put it, it is a story of hope, that no matter how bad we get, there is still a chance to turn things around. We have to choose it in the end. So
every time I think about the story of Scrooge, I'm remembered the story of Alfred Nobel, who invented the Peace Prize. And he was first known for inventing TNT, which is making explosive more stable. In theory, it was supposed to save lives in mining operations because, less combustive. But then, of course, it got used militarily. And so when they mistakenly printed his death certificate in a local newspaper he was the man who invented the explosives that the military was using. He's like, holy crap, I want to be more than that. And so he invented the Peace Prize, because you have that where you're faced who you are and it isn't who you want to be. And I think that's what makes it such a compelling story that resonates, because it's even happened in real life for people.
Well, and Dickens is writing social commentary. That's what Dickens does. And so this was social commentary where, as I recall, he had been to what's it called, the Field Lane Ragged School, which was a place for street children, an orphanage. And he had seen how the kids were treated and how the poor were treated and that kind of thing. And it wasn't meant to be a story. It was going to be an essay on the treatment of London's poor. But also at that time, the London and that culture was really kind of rediscovering Christmas. Through the early 1800s and the Industrial Revolution, they'd lost a lot of what we now think of making Christmas. Trees and cards and all that kind of stuff had kind of gone a little bit out of vogue because they were expensive, they were an extra, all that thing. And it was kind of a rediscovery going on. And so he attached to that rediscovery of Christmas traditions to also say the tradition isn't good enough unless we look at the way that we're treating our fellow man. Because it's nice to have all the shiny presents and all of this, that, and the other. But if you have need and you have want, that's always a part of Christmas present. It's one of the scarier parts of the story is when Christmas present, who has been this jolly personage says, beware these two, because this is what destroys everything. And then that leads into dealing with the ghost of Christmas future of saying, if you don't take care of this, this is what lies before you. And he was talking about that in society too, to say, if society doesn't take care of their needy, if they don't take care of their poor, the future that we have in front of us is nothing to look forward to. And so if we want all of this beautiful Christmas present, if we want the memories of the past, we have to take care of the people around us, because it's the people that are the most important thing.
The irony is, so this story wrote in 1843. He published it December 19th, 1843. And it was instantly popular. It sold out the entire first run. And I don't know how long a run would have been back then, but the entire first run was sold out before Christmas Eve. Because it was so popular, a bunch of publishers started illegally making and selling copies of it, because, copyright, like if you had to get caught before you could anything happen, right? And so he ended up suing them and he won, but the company went bankrupt because of it. So he collected nothing. So in this story about the dangers of greed, he made almost nothing from it. And that irony of that always stuck with me as well. When it comes to the story behind the story, I wonder if they cover that in The Man Who Invented Christmas, the movie you guys were talking about. I haven't seen it, so I will link to it in the show notes, dear listener, if you want to check it out yourself. What about you, Isaac? You got thoughts?
Yes, it's like every year, it's a reminder of what they were talking about with the greed and the big business and the mercantile, always selling. And A Christmas Carol is reminding us to settle down and remember the betterment of mankind. Scrooge is a miserly, he's all about accounting, and he's like a representation of the mercantile, of thought of what happens after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. So it's sort of like, it's whether it was intended or not, it's a reminder that it isn't always about money. The Christmas season. Also, it's sort of like it predates The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I have not seen. It's one of the few ghost stories in the Christmas season. It's too late for me, but you can be saved, says Marley.
So do you think that makes Christmas Carol a ghost story as well?
It's a lesson where the ghosts are used as a teaching tool.
They're basically the Greek chorus.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that makes it a ghost story? I've heard that argument. I'm kind of ambivalent. I don't have a position one way or another, but I could be convinced.
There's got to be a reason why the Ghost of Christmas Future is considered scary, or why Marley has to scream and yell and make things move and bells ring by themselves. Why all that? Because Scrooge would not have listened otherwise. He had to be scared, to be shaken up, to be turned on his head, to be able to see the world differently.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the genius of Dickens, right? Like he's really pulling back the curtain on sort of the human condition there, where, I mean, you don't make major life changes unless something really rattles your cage. Especially, the older you get, the harder the cage rattling is going to have to be for you to make a big change in who you are. And the device of the three ghosts, especially the ghost of Christmas Future, showing them, hey, look, man, your grave is where you're headed, and it's going to be unmourned and unremarked, and you're, like, that's going to be your legacy. Like that clear. I mean, I think it makes it a ghost story to some degree, but also, brilliant commentary on the human condition, because it's Dickens, very quietly and gently saying, hey, don't beware of the angry man, beware of the hungry man. And we've got an awful lot of hungry people here that nobody's paying attention to.
Well, I think he was more aware, because normally you hear the rags to riches story. His was more of a riches to rags, and then maybe mediocrity fiscally later, because he started off doing well off. I mean, just based on the number of books he had. Then his father got into some sort of debt. I haven't been able to find a clear write-up about what kind of debt, but his dad went into debt. His dad went to a debtor's prison, and he ended up working in a shoe factory and had to sell all of his personal possessions and essentially live the orphan life. So he had when he was 12, he went from knowing what privilege is to having it all taken away. And I imagine that makes it even more shocking than if you had just been grown up with it, because you didn't know any better, right? But when you've seen, like, holy crap, this, I know what a full stomach feels like. This sucks. And I think that makes the stories and the social commentary he tells that much more compelling.
He knew it on a personal level, and that translated into his own work.
Yes. And he's even like, normally, message fiction gets kind of a bad rap nowadays because it's generally, shorthand for crappy storytelling. But at least with Dickens, like, yes, he was definitely trying to push, I don't know if an agenda is the right word, more an awareness of the plight of the people often ignored. And that was evident in everything he wrote, and he didn't hide it. But you never feel like it sacrifices the story at that altar. And so he was
Dickens doesn't preach harder than he can entertain. His ability to entertain always exceeds his preachiness, and I've heard Jim Butcher say that, like, never preach harder than you can entertain. Your fiction's going to have a message in it. Every story has a theme and a message of some sort. Just be a better storyteller than you are a message teller. And I think Dickens does that beautifully.
He was one of the best. Yeah. He became a major force and inspiration behind a lot of the reformers of the Victorian era. I mean, think about that era when you're coming out of the 1700s, where life there really wasn't that fantastic. It's still at times bordered on you're coming out of the sort of the remnants of all the civil strife that happened earlier. Well, I guess that would have been far earlier now that I think about it. But anyway, it was not necessarily the nicest of times, and there was lots of problems with society in general and the class structure, and he basically shone a light on it. And then through his inspiration, you got a lot of the reformers of the Victorian era in Britain, followed by the same in America during sort of the later Gilded Age, with people like Jacob Riis, and then the Jungle, Upton Sinclair, and things like that were writing what the French called literature engagée, I believe was the term to use for fiction that causes public engagement. I remember reading that when I discovered the author Andrew Vax, who wrote it about. He wrote a detective series aimed at his passions, dealing with child welfare and abuse and crimes against children. So he used his detective series as a way to do what Dickens did, looking at the social strata and everything. I mean, I find it interesting that the word cabal was invented by Dickens as the initials of, 5 bishops that were in charge of charity that were absolutely corrupt and controlling who got help and who didn't with the church's charitable donations.
So the word cabal existed predating that, because we have the Conway. Yeah, the Conway cabal was the attempt to overthrow Washington at Valley Forge in that summer. So
I always heard it attributed to Dickens.
He might have turned it into an acronym of something, but you did mention the social strife, and so just a quick little record, like the most recent major upheaval in the world at that time would have been the Peninsula Campaign against Napoleon, which was like roughly 1802, and it ended at the high water mark of the Battle of Waterloo, which was 1815. So quick math says this was literally 28 years after the Battle of Waterloo, when Napoleon was deposed and sent to Corsica, which means there are people alive that saw the world, essentially a world war. Because, I mean, it was more than just French. It's spread all over the colonies. So it was living memory, and that does make a difference.
Well, yeah, it was back-to-back world-shaking revolutions. I mean, the American Revolution ripped the crown, the jewel from the imperial crown, which was the colonies. The French Revolution saw blood, rivers of blood. And then the Napoleonic Wars right on top of that. Like, the British society was just kind of getting their feet back under them.
Yep.
Well, and they were figuring out industry in a completely different way, too, as you worked through the 1800s. And working laws and, what your social strata breaking apart again, and what does industry do to a social strata? What does it provide? And to be on top is pretty darn nice, but you were on top because of everybody else. And so the story kind of hits that and says, what's the cost of being on top, and is it worth it? And what does that mean for your soul? What does that mean for who you want to be? And it is really brilliant because it's such tight storytelling. You can take A Christmas Carol, and I use it as an example all the time when I'm teaching different classes on building stories, because it's phenomenally tight storytelling. It's inciting incident right off the top of the bat. It's a perfect 3-act structure. There's an act for each one of the ghosts, and then you end up with the denouement that says, and this is why things were better. It's beautifully done. Your secondary characters, Jacob Marley is full mirror for Ebenezer Scrooge. There's no question. This is what you will become if you don't change, and you're going to be given an opportunity, and now you have choice. And we believe through the whole thing that he has choice. He's not being forced to do anything. He's being shown options and shown that this is the path you're on and this is where it leads eventually. So you better decide if that's what you want or not. And I think we like that too. I think a lot of people do, that it wasn't that some angel or some ghost or anybody else came down and said, you will behave, period. They just said, look, man, this is kind of where you're headed, and you might want to see to that. And we all want that idea that says, if I looked forward and saw that where I was going to be awful, and that the people that know me don't like me, that I would have that opportunity to then do something about it. So it really hit exactly what they were looking at there, as they were saying, well, what kind of society do we want to be? What kind of people do we want to be?
Well, and I think it also asks, or maybe let's ask the question, maybe makes a statement, or the idea that to be on top, it's good to be on top, but there's a responsibility that comes with being on top. You don't just get to be on top and stay there and without being responsible to the people that are keeping you on top.
And that actually was coming up a lot. So just for some context of when this was written. So this was written in 1843, published in 1843. It was literally 2 years before the official onset of the Mexican-American War, which meant there was a lot of global posturing because the French were allied with the Mexicans. The Spanish were also involved. England was in 1834, so 10 years before this was written, had just abolished slavery. So they were enforcing that globally on the international slave trade, which was affecting everything. And so from the people, if you read some of the writings of the time, the people that were at the bottom in England are like, hey, you forgot about us. And so there was a lot of upheaval. You're starting to see the issues in the factories where people are getting hurt. Some significant fires where the people died because they were locked in. So to make sure they didn't take unauthorized breaks. So there was a lot of social consciousness kind of bubbling under the surface too about, the forgotten man, so to speak, because they were so worried about saving the world, they forgot to save themselves, essentially their own people, which is, I also think, a central theme in global politics writ large, regardless of era. And I think some of the reason he's written the story the way he is, aside from wanting to rediscover Christmas, he's just rediscovering the concept of charity, and charity starts at home. I mean, isn't that the central point? Isn't that why Tiny Tim was there? It wasn't some, abstract somebody 100 miles away. It was like, no, this little kid with a wooden leg. And although I don't remember if the wooden leg was in this story or if that came later adaptations, but like the idea of the neighbor was who he helped. It wasn't some far off, poor person in a distant land. And I think that was a significant shift as well from a literary perspective.
Well, and there was a comparison there that says they have nothing as far as the things of the world, and yet look how happy they are. Here was a family gathered around a table and enjoying what little they had and enjoying their time together, and looking on that and saying they have nothing, but yet they have everything. Where does that come from? And it's a really solid question about, what do you need in order to be happy? What do you really require? And is it enough to be, around the people that you love and to have something on the table? And so that's another one of those cultural, societal questions that it was looking at was, and we hit this, at this point very strongly culturally too, of, they had a lot of problems with people that were hoarding wealth. It's why miser was already a word. that it was somebody that penny pinched and that hoarded and that kept things and didn't reach out to help. And he has the gentlemen who show up to say, we're collecting on behalf of the poor. And Scrooge says, are there no poorhouses? Why don't they go there? Why don't they, just die and decrease the surplus population? Because how could it be that he should have to give up of what he earned? It's not like his tactics were very questionable, but he earned it. And so he looked at it and went, why am I obligated to take care of somebody else? And that's a good message. And why am I not happy? And that's a better message. I'm not happy because it's not about everything that I have.
But more than that, not just he earned it, he sacrificed for it. If you look how he lives, he has a big house, but he's stingy with himself as well.
Yep. He never lets himself experience joy.
And one of the more interesting foils to that is when I believe it's Cratchit's wife, is pretty down on Ebenezer Scrooge.
Oh yeah.
And Bob Cratchit's like, no. We bless, bless Ebenezer Scrooge. I have a job, I have a paycheck because of this guy. Where I'm not going to curse him, I'm going to bless him. And it kind of, like that's one of the things that really kind of knocks a hole in one of the cracks in Scrooge's armor, is that here is this guy who he's been a hard ass with every day of this guy's employment, and yet this guy is still, blessing
defending him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the one thing I learned from economics classes in college that I still remember is that a poor person never gave me a job. So I get kind of that angle too. But that's where you mentioned in the side chat, Boncher, that the noblesse oblige. Yeah, the idea that with the great power comes great responsibility, kind of thing, to paraphrase the late great Spidey, right?
Stanley, yeah.
But that concept kind of predated Stanley, and that's essentially what they're trying to force upon him being Ebenezer, is that, hey, yes, you did really well, but that means you kind of owe it to, keep the ladder for the person behind you to climb up.
Right. You were actually, as a noble, you were supposed to take care of the people that took care of you. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the industrial age thought that since, we're commoners, we're not nobles, we don't have to. So they let a lot of those responsibilities go by the wayside. I'm just a factory owner. What do I have? I pay them a fair wage, fair in quotes. I don't, and they didn't have that. And that's something that Dickens did a really good job of bringing the light onto and shamed them about, because it's like, you may be a commoner officially, but you live like royalty and you have a responsibility to those beneath you. It's the lesson of Jakob Fugger in a certain way, the man who was so rich, he bailed out the German, was it the German princes or the German emperor, whichever. He bailed out the country of Germany with basically payments from his own treasury, because he was so rich. But he also believed in taking care of the people. And so Dickens kind of said, all right, we have the new industrial era growing, and it's got new responsibilities that are very similar to old. In a lot of ways, I find it interesting to bring it all the way forward to, that's sort of the same situation we're in today, except instead of the industrial age, it's the information age. We are experiencing the same sort of social crises happening, but even on a more personal level.
It's different in some respects because, and this is going to lead to somebody making an interesting interpretation of it, because now it's not so much that they're, substandard pay. It's more all the jobs that used to support the people at the bottom, the entry level type jobs, AI and machines are getting rid of. So what happens to those people? And you can see that you're running into some of those same themes. And I would be interested in seeing if anyone ever does a modern reinterpretation. Most of the time, the modern reinterpretations of anything is just crap. But I think this one, if you did it right, it could really sing.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
On a different note, something interesting from the author point of view, Dickens wrote this under tremendous pressure because his publishing numbers were falling off. And so he needed to write something. His publishers had come to him and said, your numbers are falling off. You're not getting the sales performance that you want. And the fact that he could be a writer as a profession altogether was, for that time, very significant. We talk about the starving artist, and the starving artist was never a very good idea, because the whole idea is you want to get paid for it so that you can put bread on the table, or it's a hobby. It's something you do for a patron or other such things. And so they came and they said, okay, look, we get it that your wife's pregnant and all this, that, and the other, but if your numbers don't come up and you don't give us something new that we can put out, your monthly is going to drop by another 50 pounds a month. Figure it out. And so he took this idea that he had for that was going to be an essay, turned it into a story, ripped the thing out in 6 weeks, mostly during long walks. And I know that JR among us takes long walks as he's pondering, what he's going to write, and wrote it all out in that 6 weeks, and it went to the publication. So this is also what happens when you put a writer under tremendous pressure and say, if you don't want to lose the money you're getting every month, you better create a story, and it better be good, and it better be now.
When you make someone eat what they hunt, it kind of makes them hungry to succeed, and you'll either phenomenally fail or phenomenally succeed, but there's really no middle ground at that point. And I do find it fascinating that he was 31 when he wrote this. So one of the greatest masterpieces of all time, and the dude was not that old, which I think is kind of, although he had lived a lot of life by 31 in his defense, I guess.
Yeah, comparatively, because the lifespan expectancy at that point was not 70 to 80 years old. It was 50 and 60. So he was firmly middle-aged by the way that you would have looked at it in that culture, because our life expectancy has gone up significantly since the 1800s.
Because he was 12 when he went into the slums, the poor shop, that also forces you to grow up quicker, even by local standards, because those working factories weren't great. The chemicals you're exposed to, for instance, to make shoes. There's a reason the expression "the Mad Hatter" exists. Why? Because the chemicals you make hats, haberdasheries, is not great for you. And so the same was applied to some of the way we tanned and treated leather that was used to make shoes. So
beaver felt has mercury in it.
Now that I did not know, but yeah.
Yep, that's why.
So obviously, we've talked about kind of the backdrop of why and the significance of A Christmas Carol in the era and how it applies. But let's try to bring things together and bring it on a happier note, because it is the Christmas season, and they are going to be listening to this maybe while they're drinking eggnog and I don't know, whatever people do at Christmas. So let's try to end it on a happier note. Do you think that the story was any less compelling when it was told by Disney with Scrooge McDuck or the Muppets or whatever, when it was trying to be made for kids? Do you think it lost any of the punch when they made it that way?
No, Gonzo says it best, because the rat asks him, isn't this too scary for kids? And he says, no, it's culture. and we underestimate very often what our kids can take. Like I say, I read it at 6 and 7 years old, and I didn't get all of it. There were things that went like this because I wasn't emotionally mature, but the story I got. And when my daughter watches a Muppets Christmas Carol with us, yes, she laughs because it's the Muppets, because we all do. But she also gets the story. The story is still there. It's still about Michael Caine making good. It's about the moment that Beaker hands him a scarf, and you see how touched he is, because it might be the first time in years that anybody has ever given him a Christmas present. And she goes, that's a thing I want to do. I want to make somebody happy in that way. And so it doesn't dim the message. It might dim some of the social commentary a little bit, but I don't think in a significant way. I love the Muppets Christmas Carol the same way that I love the one that we watched that's a theater in the round. It's a musical, and it is beautiful. It is. You go and you take all of the tissues, because we sob through. They sing Green Sleeves, What Child Is This? After Tiny Tim dies. And we just sob, because here's this father that is to this point and so broken. And we've all been so broken. And we know this grief, we know this joy, we know all these things. And I don't think it takes anything away to say it's done by Scrooge McDuck, or it's done by the Muppets, or it's done by whatever, because the story is still that touching thing that says we can all be better.
Any closing thoughts from anyone else?
No, I couldn't top that if I wanted to. That's brilliant.
Right. So as we bring this to a close, we are airing this. Normally we would air Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but Wednesday this year is Christmas. So we are airing this on Christmas Eve, a Tuesday. So are any of you that you know of having any sales on your books that you might want to hawk at the moment before we close this podcast down for the night?
Yep, I currently have all 3 of my Akinawazi ebooks on sale. The Akinawazi Saga is on sale for 99 cents ebooks till the end of the month. So that's going on right now.
Is that for sale on Amazon or somewhere else?
It's through Book Funnel. I will get you the link for the show notes.
Absolutely. Please do. What about you, Jana? You always do the sales. Are you doing anything special this Christmas?
The first book, Death's Night, the first book in the War of the Lich series, is on 99-cent sale all the way until New Year's Day, and then it will come back up, and that's also when all of those books will go out of KU. So if you want to read them in KU or start it at 99 cents, that'll go through the end of the month, and then that goes away, and new things are coming next year.
Frankie Standing. Isaac, you going to have anything for sale?
Oh, not yet. I'm not on that level yet. But I hope to be one of these days.
Oh, I have faith. All right, Dave, I know you got publishers you work through, but have you heard anything on your end?
Yeah, I got nothing. No special sales or anything. It's, the 2 books are out at the usual price.
All right. And since we're talking to you at the moment, Dave, so how can listeners and viewers at home find you on the Wild Interwebs?
You can find me at davidwhensley.com. That's my webpage, and it'll link you to my socials. If you don't want to fool about with web pages to get to my socials, you can find me at David Hensley Writes on Facebook or D. Hensley Writes at Instagram and on the website formerly known as Twitter.
Okay. Boncher. MD Boncher. Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better. You can find me at residentmedia.art, as you can see in my name there. I write, like I said, 2 series. You can also find me on Facebook, Substack, and Bandcamp under Resonant One. So those are 3 places if you want to hear my music as well. That's where you can find it there on Bandcamp. I think that's pretty much topping the Instagram too, since Instagram and Facebook are tied together. So, yep, under MD Boncher, you can find me there.
All right, Jana, the many personalities thereof.
Oh, I'm doing a lot of things. You can find my many personalities over on opalkingdompress.com. There will also be at the beginning of the year some new open calls coming for some anthologies that are going to run through the press. So I'm excited about those. I can be found on Facebook and all of the usual social medias, generally under Jena Rey or Jena Rey Author or Jana S Brown or Jadlyn Asher or any number of other things. I will also put a bug out there that under my Jana S Brown pen name are my 2 family cookbooks. So if you want the recipes for all of the candies and the everything else that I talk about all the time, those are in the family cookbooks and they are available on Amazon. And the one is from Hand in Hand from Field to Family. And the other one is called Cherries, Chocolate, and Children. Yes, I know exactly how that sounds, and yet that is still the name of the family cookbook. Take it as you will.
Okay. That's the funny one with cookbooks. There's been a couple of instances where, churches will put together like parishioner cookbooks, their favorite recipes, and they end up getting sued because someone's family recipe was actually stolen from the back of like the Campbell's box or whatever.
All the time.
And then the other one that's funny when it comes to cooking, and then Isaac, you'll get to tell us how we can follow you. There's a couple of funny stories when it comes to holiday cooking. One of the comedians I was listening to was on my walk yesterday, was talking about it. And she was saying how she was making pot roast, and she was cutting the ends off of the pot roast. And her husband's like, why are you cutting the ends off? I don't know. That's just how mom did it. So she calls her mom, and mom's like, I don't know. That's just how grandma did it. So she calls grandma, and grandma's like, I don't know. You're going to have to ask your great grandma. She's the one who taught me. So they calls the great grandmother, who blessedly was still with them. And she's like, oh, because my pan didn't fit the thing. So I had to cut the ends to make it fit. And a tradition was born.
Oh, man.
I have a recipe that is all done based on the tools that grandma had in the kitchen. So it was, you're going to take this big red bowl, then you're going to take 2 of the blue pitchers of milk. It's like, how much is in the blue pitcher? We don't know. So we have an estimation as to how that recipe worked, but it never tastes quite the same because we have no idea what were the exact measurements of what she used, because she wrote it all down based on the tools in her kitchen that she happened to be using. The good teaspoon. I don't know what's different about the good teaspoon versus all the rest of the teaspoons in her kitchen. So I love that kind of thing. I think it's great.
There's a funny one where they found George Washington's recipe, because he was pretty famous back in the day. He was pretty famous for his hard apple cider. And so they did 2 things. They hired and I hate to give them credit because I'm a UVA fan, but Virginia Tech actually reverse engineered apples to what they would have been back then, because we've engineered them to be bigger but less nutritionally dense. And so they tasted different back then. So they got the apples based on what he would have probably had back then, but all of his ingredients on how to make his hard apple cider, he didn't put any measurements. It's just this, and this. And so they have like people like professionals, chemists and cooks trying to figure out how to replicate that recipe. And they think they've got it. And if you've got the money, it's like $300 for the bottle. You can buy it from his estate. A bottle. Well, if I get rich enough or enough friends can go in with me just so we can, cut the price down, I would like to see if I could taste history.
I will admit I've had something similar with you talking about the good pictures and then what it really tasted like. My grandmother's stuffing recipe. It had things on there like use a spoonful of spry. What's spry? I had no idea until one day, scrolling through something, I saw an advertisement for Spry, a Crisco alternative. She used the brand name, and none of the spices have measurements. None. I had to figure it out by shape.
She measured with love.
Yes, exactly. In other words, winging it.
But I because I'm colorblind, I don't see like the colors right, so I see textures. But what that means with cooking, I use a meat thermometer to make sure the temperature is perfect, and I'm exact. Like it's a science project for me. I can't just wing it a prayer because I just can't do that. So every time I've got like my sisters will be cooking, like, oh, just a little bit of this and a dash of that. I'm like, what's a dash? What's a little bit? Come on.
I also have a slight case of synesthesia going, so I with flavors I get shapes. So I experience shapes as well. This tastes too sharp. This tastes flat. This tastes round. So it's weird. And I know it's right when I have the right shape for what it's supposed to be in my head.
Nice. So we lifted the mood talking about getting fat. I mean, eating good food. So Isaac, as we bring this puppy home, how can we stalk you? I mean, follow you on the internet.
You can find me on Facebook, Isaac Craft. As far as I know of, I'm one of the few authors who is Isaac Craft. I've also got an Instagram page where I do a lot of cooking and show off what I've done. I also hunt the Discord, the Ravens page.
Oh, yes, Discord.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Discord is a cool place to hang out. And with that, you can follow us, dear listener, on our link tree at linktr.ee linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the bit shoots, the rumbles, the TikToks, the YouTubes, the Twitters, the Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blasters and blades podcast at gmail.com. Again, blasters and blades podcast at gmail.com for professional purposes only. Save the shenanigans from Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. We have our website over there linked at the link tree. A bunch of gobbledygook. Don't hate us, hate Spotify, but you can go there and you can follow our podcast if you want the audio only version. Or you can support the show if you want to keep the lights on. The good news, we caught in under the wire. We renewed for the year with StreamYards on November 30th. So we only had to pay $96 for the year, not the increased $500. So we renewed just under the wire before they officially implemented the price. So I got a year to figure out an alternative that's idiot-proof for me. So we don't have to worry about that one anymore. And you can support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Hanley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Hanley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast. And I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it flows out of their nostrils. All right. That might actually be uncomfortable, but if you go to the links in the show notes, code podcast grunts, you get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. You help defray the obvious cost of maintaining this podcast for you. And we do it as a labor of love, but every little penny you throw at us to help keep the lights on does make a difference. So I do actually fund this through my yearly coffee bill. So when you supply the overhead, you let me drink a cup of coffee when I write. So I really do appreciate you. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Hanley, and this was the Blasters Blaze podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And as I hit this close, you will be listening to this on New Year's Eve. So this is our reminder from all of us to all of you to enjoy the little moments with your family. When they're gone, you'll wish you had spent more time with your relatives. So, put the pencil down, put the work down, be in the moment with your family. Nobody on their deathbed says, I wish I worked more. So, and with that, I am going to hit the end button. Thank you all for coming on. Merry Christmas, everybody. And happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. I don't know if I'm missing any other holidays, but happy you too. And with that, wait for it.